È bello avere quello che ti serve quando ti serve. Con EasyBank, la banca digitale di Intesa San Paolo. EasyBank, semplicemente banca.
Vi prego, vi imploro, con umiltà e con fiducia, permettete a Cristo di parlare all'uomo.
Don Gius aveva capito il problema che avevo. Se la tua vocazione è vero, il tuo lavoro verrà fuori anche dai sassi.
Di comunicare la fede agli altri, ma veramente insieme a loro riscoprire che cos'è la fede, che cos'è la fede per me. Portare Cristo agli altri, comunicarlo agli altri è l'unico modo che abbiamo per conoscerlo veramente.
L'iter communionis aiuta a comunicare all'esterno la ricchezza di vita, di giudizi, di tentativi, di opere che nascono dalle persone e dalle comunità. L'iter communionis è proprio la vita del movimento. Scrivete all'iter communionis le vostre esperienze, ci fate bene.
È bello avere quello che ti serve quando ti serve. Con EasyBank, la banca digitale di Intesa San Paolo. EasyBank, semplicemente banca.
Vi prego, vi imploro, con umiltà e con fiducia, permettete a Cristo di parlare all'uomo.
Don Gius aveva capito il problema che avevo. Se la tua vocazione è vero, il tuo lavoro verrà fuori anche dai sassi.
comunicare la fede agli altri, ma veramente insieme a loro riscoprire che cos'è la fede, che cos'è la fede per me. Portare Cristo agli altri, comunicarlo agli altri è l'unico modo che abbiamo per conoscerlo veramente.
L'Iter Communionis aiuta a comunicare all'esterno la ricchezza di vita, di giudizi, di tentativi, di opere che nascono dalle persone e dalle comunità. L'Iter Communionis è proprio la vita del movimento. Scrivete all'Iter Communionis le vostre esperienze, ci fate bene.
Questo è un luogo che genera dialogo,
Qualcuno che si impegna, che si batte.
che approfondisce la conoscenza e sostiene la fiducia. È un crocevia dove si incontra chi desidera il vero, il bello, il giusto e il bene. È una testimonianza di speranza nel cuore ferito del presente. E tutto questo
Proporre con la propria vita.
esiste anche grazie a te.
Buongiorno.
Good afternoon and welcome to this session titled Brick by Brick, the Strength of Connections. We have as invited speakers people that have been building society bottom up. And one of them is a really great builder of society, that is His Eminence Cardinal Zuppi. We are thankful for your presence here. Thank you so much.
E se volete...
And if you like, the question is not for experts, really. It is a question that we all have. How is it possible to have hope, to have faith, at a time when everything seems to be collapsing? There are wars, there's no agreement, countries are fighting against each other, and so on and so forth. How can we have trust and not think that we have to just dig into our small parcel of nice and beauty? and forgetting about all the rest. I will make reference to a couple of statements. One that marked the pontificate of Pope Ratzinger, the one about creative minorities. When John Paul II passed away, Ratzinger was in Subiaco, and he said, at this time, when everything is collapsing, one has to start again from creative minorities, places where life is being lived. As in St. Benedict, everything was collapsing. And in that place that it still seems to be so unreachable now, out of Rome, started to build something that changed the society. And in this statement, we can see claim by Arismot McIntyre, American philosopher, taken by Don Giussani, that said a decisive turning point in that old history, in that time, was when men and women of goodwill moved away from the task of attacking the Roman Empire, but they entrusted themselves with another task, that is constructing new forms of communities within which moral life could be sustained. So the title really refers to the strength of relations, of connections. What does that mean? The idea of relations and connections that are rebuilt in places where this seems to be impossible, without waiting for power to be able to rebuild them. The strength of connections put there something that is a novelty immediately for someone, and something new is going to be reborn. So there's no point in waiting for someone to do something from the outside. So this is not just a moral principle. This is a fundamental principle of the church social doctrine, that is subsidiarity. Subsidiarity in 1941 was proclaimed on the idea whereby no reality at a higher level can replace something that starts very well from the bottom. But today, still today, in 2025, it means something more. It's not just about organization. It is the fact that the starting point is where human beings are reborn. It's not just the selfishness of individuals that can bring wealth in the economy, or homo homini lupus in the politics. It is faith, it is the ideal. When reconstructed, they give an idea of a new reconstruction there, and that becomes little by little an example for the general, to the point that today it's felt by everybody that such a principle was taken by the former governor of the Bank of India, Rajan, a great economist at the world level, who wrote a book titled The Third Pillar. And he says, the market and the state are not enough. Places where something new can be recreated are necessary. We are betting on this method now. We are reproposing this, and you will see today what this means. And we will hear from His Eminence, Don Matteo, and an evocative name indeed. Well, it seems that it works, really. It is the 15th edition, so we will see what that means. And I'm going to conclude my introduction by saying a couple of things. First of all, this brings not just to society a slogan that may be weird among us, but it is more society, more state, and not, as we used to say 30 years ago, more society and less state, but more society and more collaboration with public administration altogether, given the problems. And as was said, at the Foundation for Subsidiarity, the award of subsidiarity was given to President Mattarella, who said, subsidiarity, first and foremost, is an expression and guarantee of liberty for freedom and social bodies that concur to the general interest and that in the plurality of relations work for generating continuously those values of humanity and co-responsibility that represents one of the most important pillars of our social model and the European social model. So a President of the Republic embracing such a method and encouraging us to promote it. So we're not talking about the small and beautiful today. We're talking about something that concerns everything in general, and hopefully it's going to be turned into a method. So I'm really looking forward to hearing more about this and its meaning. So let me introduce now, besides His Eminence that I have already introduced, our interlocutors. First of all, we have Maila Quaglia from the social cooperative Nazareno, who will tell us about an incredible experience of disabled people in the city of Bologna. Then we have Genny Guariglia, president of the Icaro Association in Naples in the Sanità district. Naples is not just about negative things that we can hear. And then we have Chiara Griffini, president of the National Service for the Protection of Minors of the CEI, the Italian Bishops' Conference, who will tell us about very difficult situations from which it is possible to recover. And finally, we have Luigino Quarchioni from the Forum of the Third Sector from the Marche region, and Paolo Gobbi, president of the Volunteer Services Center of the Marche region, who will tell us about how this is linked to the public. So a short movie that we're really looking forward to watch, really. So let me give the floor to Maila, first and foremost. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Giorgio. Today, I would like to share my story referring to the etymology of testimony, that is the one that attests, not the one that does. In fact, it shouldn't be me here talking about what I'm going to say, but there should be those that started the Nazareno experience. So my intervention refers to a long story starting with the 80s. Sergio Zini and Marco Viola, current president and vice president of the networks of the Nazareno cooperatives that were collaborators of a priest. They started the first daily center in a modest place in vocational education institutions for the hotel industry, founded in the 50s by an enlightened priest in the city of Capri in the province of Modena. We don't have enough time to talk about the story of this enlightened person who, after the war, started a series of initiatives, among which the most important one was this educational institute for the hotel industry to give opportunities to orphaned children after the war and their families, to give them an opportunity for a job and for a profession. A few years ago, there was a beautiful exhibition for Don Ivo Silingardi, but we're not here to talk about him in particular. I would like to talk about the communion between these two great persons that are still today living stones of these cooperatives where everything started, together with this priest. In the 80s, the main emergency in the area and in the whole of Italy was not about orphaned children after the war, but it was about finding answers for disabled children. Nothing was new about them because they used to be closed in the house, and the cooperative Nazareno started to give an answer to these kids, starting with a daily center, opening a daily center, and then following their needs and their questions, all the things that we have today was created. We have a network of 5 social cooperatives that then were structured in the 90s, when by law it was possible to create a cooperative of type A and type B, one for rehabilitation and assistance and the other one for job inclusion for disadvantaged people. And all this was done following the needs and the desires of these people. And there is an anecdote that I would like to share with you about Cesare, that used to attend the daily center and who is still here with us. And he said, "Marco, you cheated me because you told me that you were going to open the Nazareno during the night, but this is not the case." And since Marco Viola was talking over the phone with the old phone, the line phone, he cut the cable as a sign of protest against Marco that didn't open the center over the night. So the first center for the night then started, and this is just an example, after which many more followed. There are centers for residential rehabilitation or training centers, vocational training centers, and all this was done following step by step in dialogue with the public administration that sometimes helped us and other times put obstacles to us. But maybe due to these obstacles, there was even more creativity. And today we have this great reality that employs 160 people approximately. We realized this year how many we were when we prepared a gift to all the collaborators and the employees. Well, my story with the Nazareno Cooperative started in 2000. Nazareno Cooperative started in the area of the Modena city and Carpi in particular. I was about to graduate, and in Bologna, the director of a museum in the city center wanted to make his dream come true, that is, opening a museum to be managed by patients with mental disorders. And he didn't find cooperatives that would be available in the community to deal with this project. It was a bit of a weird project because cooperatives at that time used to deal with activities to manage parks and gardens. So it was by chance that I had this contact with this museum, and through knowing another person, got to know the Nazareno Cooperative, which was not present in Bologna, but it was me looking for a job. So I started with the Nazareno Cooperative with this small group of patients that came from a daily center with this project in managing a museum in the center of Bologna. I would have never imagined that that could have started a whole series of initiatives in Bologna in psychiatry. And today, we are all involved in this field for rehabilitation and job inclusion. Job inclusion was developed in the museum area, and not only that, while for more intensive healthcare services needs, the experience that can be mentioned as more significant in our reality is a psychiatric residential center welcoming very young patients with serious mental disorders. This center is called Casa Mantovani, and that's the experience that takes most of my energy. And after a couple of years, after starting this in 2006, other initiatives concerning mental health in Bologna were started. For example, flat groups, apartment groups, to give continuity for those people after leaving a residential center, for those people that could not go back to their home. So this is possibly the most complex reality that we are facing today, because it is a reality that requires not just a know-how, but even a how to be and the ability to adjust to emerging needs. So we have a general idea normally of a psychiatric community, but that's not what we have. Our place is a place where we have young people from 18, 20, 25 years old, and these young people come with the dilemmas and the problems that are experienced by the current generation in an extreme form. This generation is marked by an anthropology that has considered individualism, performance, and success the most important values. So everything is directed to the development of one's personality for success, but it is precisely those categories that created difficulties for many young people that could defend themselves from their inner anguish, developing psychopathological symptoms. I believe that our society, because of this anthropology, can make people ill, sick, and these young people are just crying out the need for a change, beginning with the categories with which we structure our existence. For this session, Giorgio posed 2 questions. What not-for-profit organizations can bring to society? Well, in my view, not-for-profit organizations have a gratuity as a starting base. There's no limit to the time and to the energy, and that brings a leap of creativity and vitality in creating projects, and this cannot be found in theory only. The same can be said about public administration. We bring a healthy disruption from that because we don't have ready-made projects, but we have projects resulting from dialogues and exchanges, and we revise and review and rethink our projects on a daily basis. I hope that this session is being watched and listened to by our administrators at a local, regional, and national level. So I hope that they are aware of the importance that these important experiences should be not left alone. Because there is a sort of managementization, pardon this neologism, of the administrators, so increasing the bureaucracy that is very dangerous for us. Just an example. Our reality started with a strong rehabilitation impulse. Today, we are considered private nursing homes because we are considered within the healthcare sector and rehabilitation activities. So it would be important to consider the specific characteristics that are now present with the people, with the structure where we work, to consider the resources, because we are considered without sufficient knowledge by the lawmakers sometimes. I would like to thank you all for listening, and I would stop here. Giorgio, I hope I stick to the allotted time. Thank you.
Allora passiamo da Bologna.
So let's move from Bologna to Napoli with Genny. Yes, we're going to watch a video to start with. So the sanitary district needs a place where people can gather and where people can talk to each other. And Icaro, then it's very important. So it's not a place of fear. Instead, it's a beautiful place. It's a very involving experience. It's an important place for our district, and our community. Icaro is a response to crime because it's an alternative, because training, education, being with the other, sharing with people that have different views than yours, and being there with the most deprived people, all that is the only alternative.
Icaro è un posto.
Icaro is a place where I go to, not just to get lessons of mathematics and physics, but I go there most of all to be kind to myself. And I was able to improve my learning skills by coming to Icaro, improve my performances in mathematics. I came here when I was in my high school years, and I was hopeless with respect to my life and my school career, but thanks to the support and help of Professor Genny, and thanks to this center, I was able to find the right motivation, not just for my studies, but also for my own life, to carry on. I was able to better understand to what extent small gestures are important, and my somehow desire to learn was rekindled. And it's beautiful to see things through the eyes of other people, to get here to get new chances. So what struck me the most was to see young people just looking on the books, on the pages, and then going away with a smile. Professors are there, always ready to listen to you, welcoming you as you are. And we try to go beyond the pure learning and teaching. We wanted to, we feel seen. So these people give you their time, their attention, and their love for free. It's a place where you can really find people that really want to learn, and you can feel useful. It was a great experience because instead of staying in bed for 8 hours a day, I was able to go out and find some motivation to try to study. So trying to go back on one's feet, feeling welcome, feeling accepted, feeling seen. That's my experience. So you live for love, for something that is happening now. And yes, we need to live in the moment. This is the most important thing. Yes, true love is something that happens in the moment.
Allora, come avete visto,
as you could see in the video, the Icaro Association is an association that helps people, and especially young people, in their studies. But I'd like to try to tell you what is inside, what is behind what we do at Icaro. The association stems from the desire of a group of teachers and non-teachers to create a place where young people could get help for their studies, but also a place that could be a place of sharing in order to support them in their lives. So we welcome many high school students. We provide them with studying help, and we give Italian classes to foreign youngsters. We also work with local schools, and the Sanità district in Naples has a very high demographic density. We have many schools around us, and so we work with the local schools, with the families, and we are supported by Don Enrico Assini, the priest of the local church. Over the years, I saw that the help and support of voluntary workers was key, because Icaro becomes a family for these young people, and they always use this word when they tell about their experience with us, with Icaro, because there is really a friendship-based relation that we established, and that keeps striking me. It's incredible. Personally, I experienced something extremely special over the last year and a half, because in December 2023, I lost my son, Vittorio. He was 18 years old, and now the association is dedicated to him. And I went straight back to Icaro after his death. And when I got back home at night, well, my heart was at peace, and I could not explain myself why. I could not understand that. Why is it so that my heart is so full of pain, but I feel at peace in spite of everything? And I understood one thing, I realized one thing, because the stories, the faces that I met at Icaro, I was the object of a miracle. So the human element somehow being rekindled. So pain, frailty, vulnerability are not the last word. Nicodemus said, can a man be born again when that man is old? Yes, even if you are 80 years old. So, and with the oldest voluntary worker that we have is 80 years old. Yes, you can still live a rebirth even when you are that old. Well, I want to share two things that happened this year. We had an encounter with Ilaria. Ilaria dropped out from school at one point, and when she joined us, she was going through very dark times. She was in a very dark place. She thought that her life was lacking any value, that was meaningless. And at one point, she realized that somebody was waiting for her, was accepting her as she was, and that changed everything. And she wrote, I met a place where I started to breathe again, where there was no rush to be okay, but time to be fragile. I met people who knew how to be there, in silence, with respect, with care, without ever telling me what to do, but making me understand that I could do it. Today, I know that you fall, but I know that you can get back up, thanks to someone who makes you understand that despite everything, you deserve to be seen, and that every life still has a possibility within it, this possibility. I found this possibility thanks to Icaro. And well, then Ilaria got her diploma, and today comes to Icaro to help younger children. Another encounter that I want to share with you is with Marco. This is not a real name. Marco is a young man who has made serious mistakes in his life, and that brought him in prison. When he came to Icaro, after a while, he said to me, but everything here is free, isn't it? And I said, yes. Well, I feel that. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, even if I ended up in prison, I feel and I see when something is free. And I saw it with my mother, and I see that again here. This is a place where you can come back to when you don't know where to go. These are just two things that I experienced this year at Icaro, two great encounters I had this year at Icaro. And so I think about a sentence that Don Giussani used to say, and he used to say, no one generates unless he's generated. So being generated, so recognizing life as a gift. So somebody is giving us their life. And the life becomes more beautiful and more authentic if we can share it with the others. And this is what I see every day at Icaro. So we have heard about 2 places, and now let's talk about a situation that seems doomed. But again, we find hope again. Chiara Griffini, president of the National Service for the Protection of Minors of the CEI. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Well, when I read the title of this year's meeting, I immediately thought about what we do. So trying to penetrate the vacant places of betrayed confidence, of the loneliness provoked by an abuse perpetrated in religious, in ecclesiastic context, and then activating, regenerating processes. Eliot tells us that we need new bricks. So it tells us in the choruses of the rock in order to build new relations. And we are aware that so procedures and tools are not enough. We need specifically trained people, networks of listening and shared skills, so communities that try to consider also the training to protection, because protection means also watching somebody, and the very first key element of training is observing, watching, and this already tells us a lot. When we talk about protection, it's not just about preventing and fighting against abuse, but also is trying to protecting the relational assets of any form of community life. So trying to make that our relations can let us evolve and develop both at individual and social level. But most of all, the places we inhabit, even the ecclesiastical places, need to be places where respect and dignity must be irrepressible values that let us be the guardians of each other, so that everything is aimed at being at the service of people without any kind of imposition or of oppression or usurpation. So we adopted some guidelines, and the key principle is about a community accountability. Each and every one of us has to play their role in order to really make a difference, to prevent the context to be blurred, that makes relations generative relations. But then there is another key element that I want to share with you. So listening to those who were blessed. And we have a specific program for listening and accompanying the victims, because listening to the victims is the very first form of prevention. So next to the diocese's minor protection services aimed at training activities, we also have specific centers where people can be heard. Anybody who was victim of an abuse of any kind can go to somehow share their experience with ecclesiastical authorities and communicate what happened to them. And these are special centers where people can be listened to, and people are at the center with their needs, so with their specific needs, also in terms of need for justice. I want to talk about the mother of a minor victim of abuses, and she wrote this. Well, when it comes to the disorientation and noise scandal, discreet and delicate arrives the church that was also blessed and tries to restore that blessed confidence. Through these hearing centers, it supports family, helping them tell their stories, and then thanks to the support of specifically trained staff and pragmatic activities, try to give a name to these acts and deeds, defining them for what they are. So abuse of the good faith of many young people, of their innocence and naivety of the gospel message, but also and most of all, crimes that need to be reported to civil and religious authorities. So these are just some of the reflections that were published last year on the occasion of the specific national day that we have, November 18th of every year, and that coincides with the International Day. Last year, well, we just had, until a few years ago, we just have a national day to celebrate the fight against minors abuse. And so again, this is a major flaw that we need to fight against internally, but also universally. And from last year onwards, we have special reflections for that special day, and the reflections are written by survivors and victims. And this is very important because we can focus on the importance of listening. I want to read another extract from these reflections that is about another key element, another building block, another brick. It's about a couple of parents. You can find it on our national website. When the scandal blew up, our community split in two. So those who were moving accusations and those who felt blessed, and the supporters of that person who were blind in front of the evidence. In just 1 second, years of Christian brotherhood and friendships were cancelled, and there were just fights among sides. We felt disappointed and frustrated because, again, a divide was generated, those against and those in favor. It was very hard to go beyond circumstances, to go beyond the abuser and try to being embraced by the arms of the God. So the ecclesiastical hierarchy and the religious experience we were following with so expressed judgment of mercy about what happened. They activated themselves immediately in order to avoid the destruction of the community and try to avoid further conflict. Unfortunately, 10 years, we had to wait for 10 years before having further moves by the church, especially when it comes to abuse situations. So I really wanted to read this because this tells us something important. This is about a new brick that we need to use. We need to look at those who have the courage to somehow acknowledge the facts, and specifically we need to enhance the role played by the people who try to keep a community together in order to make a community understand. It's not about simply defining who is to blame or not, but trying to restore confidence in the relationships. I want to end up on a third brick resulting from a biblical comment for last year's National Day of Fight Against Abuse. This is about a victim who wrote again, who somehow interpreted what happened to them through a specific biblical episode. So going back to something broken that is restored. And it says, without authentic forgiveness, implying both the attitude of the person offering forgiveness and that being the object of forgiveness, we need to consider the fact that everybody is being naked in front of each other, so the victim and the perpetrator. And again, these mutual acknowledgement is needed. I think that these words make us understand to what extent a new brick implies a new gaze, a new point of view with respect to the crime and specifically perpetrated abuse. That is the only way to embrace healing pathways, but also re-educational pathways for those who are blessed, because the church does not leave behind anybody in order to have reparation and justice for everybody.
Allora passiamo alla...
Now we can move on to the next question. Can these things collaborate with public administration? So now the floor goes to Paolo Gobbi, President of the Volunteer Services Center of the Marche region, and Luigino Quarchioni, Forum of the Third Sector, please. Thank you and good afternoon, everybody. As I was walking around the meeting this morning with Luigino Canavesi, I was struck by an information that 7 million people in Italy do voluntary work. And here we are trying to support these people and voluntary associations. Forum is more of a political association with 43 associations of a second level, and the CSV instead is more operational. So we give advice and counseling services for participating to call for tenders, all free of charge. But as Vittadini said, it's not enough to be alone. We need to have a relationship with public administrators, a strong and synergetic relation. So in 2020, based on an intuition of Simone Bucchi, my predecessor, we started a relationship leading to 5 projects with the Marche region, funded by the Marche region, in which the associations, the big networks, along with the small associations, there are more than 700 in the Marche region and 450 are part of the CSV, started some projects in which the association continued to do what they knew what to do in the daily activities, and we were supporting them in their daily management and accounting and reporting, because we want to be an agent of change in our community, and we wanted to do that in a concrete way. So from here, important activities were started. We put together important associations at the same table with the public authorities. So the state and society collaborate together more and more, as was mentioned at the beginning of this session. I remember the smiley faces, happy faces of the presidents of these associations that after the first project, the first year, were finding this initiative useful. They were finding something positive in what the CSV was giving, in the relations between them. They were growing, that were developing. So a relationship of mutual support. And why are we continuing this? Because we had 5 projects. Riesco was the first project. That means I can do it, even if we didn't know if we could do it, but it was successful. And then the second project is called Facciamo Rete, let's do a network. And the idea was to create a network of community associations and have collaboration among them. Because up until then, there was no collaboration. It was more of an autonomous work. What Cardinal Zuppi said during the Mass this morning, everyone was a brick that could stand by itself and could give support during difficult times like the COVID crisis in 2020, but we favored the construction and the fact of putting a brick of solidarity next to the other. We could build a house, a structure in which a community could be created, a community of interest, a community of meeting, a community of values. And this has been acknowledged to the point that more and more associations want to take part in these projects and have these moments of dialogue with the public authorities. To conclude, I would like to talk about the last project that we did. This project was based on a shared design While the previous projects were simple calls, for this one we collaborated with Councillor Biondi from the Marche region, and with the CSV and the forum favored these meetings and dialogues, and with community associations, not through a call, but through needs analysis. We had a long path that was complex, but it was true because there was a circular subsidiarity, so to say, to cite Zamagni, that was helpful to everybody, because understanding the needs, to understand the people living in the community in the Marche region that can have support. So to answer the question, is it possible to collaborate together? Well, it is necessary to put self-referentiality aside a little bit, maybe, but it is possible. Over the last 5 years of the 5 projects that we did, I think it is worth mentioning the importance of intermediate bodies, because with the state, with the public authorities, they can concretely support our society. Intermediate bodies cannot be excluded because they're really the heart of our country, of our nation, and it is only by integrating the public authorities with more state, with more society through these intermediate bodies, will it be possible to have social innovation that is really the heart of our country. Thank you.
Buon pomeriggio.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank Paolo that has already mentioned the 5 projects. You can see information on the slide, but I'll go through them quickly because I really like mentioning what we have learned with this 5-year experience about subsidiarity that was referred to by Vittadini. These 5 projects were carried out in 5 years, so Riesco, Facciamo Rete, Viride, Welfare Culture, and Radici. Radici is still ongoing. It will be completed in September next year. These 5 projects were adjusted to the time schedule. The first, Riesco, was an answer to COVID, the COVID crisis, to the needs, the questions, to the dramatic situations that were looking for an answer. And then in Facciamo Rete, we try to understand what the problems had been left behind by the COVID pandemic. So we focused more on the exacerbation of some issues, desires and needs. We can also refer to them as desires. And then with Viviride, we focus more on the third sector because the COVID pandemic changed the relation systems among third sector entities. We were not ready to such a big revolution. We had to reorganize our teams, our volunteers, and remotivate them, giving them back a view, a vision of the change that was going on. And then welfare culture, through the sense of cultural initiatives in the widest possible imaginable way, we tried to influence the community in a positive way. And finally, the Radici project has an innovative element, which is demanding. In talking to the Marche regional authorities with Councillor Biondi and Simone Bucchi from CSV, as Paolo mentioned, these are many women that believed in this. So we talked to them and we agreed on the fact that 1/3 of the resources of the project would be destined to all the other small community associations in districts, in neighborhoods that would have presented projects. It is something that is very innovative, really courageous in a way, and we are at this stage. It is also a mature and responsible action because the 18 networks representing 800 units on the community said that part of the funding must be used to help all the many associations present in the community and doing good in the community. I'll mention some figures, just one for all. All the services that we did in the first 4 projects are 247,116. I mentioned even the last 6 services, but imagine what they can mean for us and for the Marche community. And to conclude, I would like to share some lessons and sensations that we received from these projects. First of all, from crisis, often good things emerge. The COVID pandemic, when this project started, created a great demand for services. There was such a big poverty that had exploded. There was such a social anger, unimaginable anger that we have experienced, and all the third sector entities were downgraded in a way. They were not up to the challenge. They didn't have resources to respond to all that. So that was the pact that we made among all the entities, the regional authorities, the CSV and forum that accompanied us, but also other subjects beyond the public authorities. For example, foundations, bank foundations that shared with us an activity that could cover the resources, the financial resources that were asked for covering the financial resources of these projects. The bank guarantees, because sometimes there are no guarantees for 2-3 billion euro requests. We are undercapitalized. That's the case for most part of third sector entities, and foundations intervened, saying that they were guaranteeing 50%. 30% of that guarantee was offered by the bank issuing the funding, and 20% was for the third sector entities. Those involved in planning know very well what that meant. And the last thought I would like to mention is really a personal one. All this did well to the third sector because we are not immune to the crisis experienced by our society. Our authorities say that we are in a social situation in which there are so much individualism, and individualism doesn't make contact with other people. So we were worried about that kind of approach. Even the entities, the associations, are made of men and women that are fearful of change. And after these 5 years of planning and designing projects, helped us rediscover the relationship, and they made us fear less the possibility of being allies and collaborating initiatives and maybe even support each other, because then we were passing the baton when there were some difficulties. And that was really a fantastic moment, great human and social experience, a desirable experience indeed. And I would like to conclude by saying something that you made me think about as I listened to you, the things that you do. Let's imagine the third sector. How can you question this third sector at a moment like this? Thank you.
Don Matteo.
The word goes to Don Matteo. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you, because we heard testimonies that are extremely powerful, express passion, history, suffering, pain, many vacant places, because we heard about realities and situations of loneliness, of great difficulties. So we need really to thank all these people. And I remember the Confundite that is about this Jubilee. And also I think it's about this meeting that is very special, because it is helping us better understand and look with hope to the future. And as Giorgio said in the beginning, sometimes hope seems to be impossible, especially when things are so complex and difficult. But hope is important and meaningful when there are problems. Hope becomes relevant and meaningful when there seems to be no hope. I remember two sentences. The first one is that it's important to consider the good that is in the whole world, not to be tempted by evil and violence. It is so, so true. So it's really about being somehow pragmatic and rational. But again, the good should always be remembered and reminded of. And the second thing that Pope Francis used to say is that, and you were referring to this a minute ago, the Alliance for Social Hope. And he said that this alliance should be inclusive and not ideological. So this must be future-oriented. And again, this alliance should be future-oriented. It's not to be taken for granted, and it's not easy at all. Well, talking about subsidiarity with Giorgio is easy because he deeply believes in that. But, I mean, it's wonderful how it keeps raising questions in us. What is subsidiarity about? It's about a social alliance, nothing but that. Somebody talked about the fact of being self-referential, like, you know, being centered about oneself. And well, sometimes people just waste the things they have, or behave badly, or are lazy, or waste chances. And so people are taking away things because they were not able to make the most of them. And why not? I mean, this is subsidiarity. This is what subsidiarity is about, this kind of attitude. So I'm not saying this because Giorgio is a huge supporter of this, but I think that Giorgio deserves a round of applause. About the third sector, what was said is absolutely right, but the risk is homologation. The risk is losing that added value that remains crucial. That is the secret ingredient that should not be lost, gratuitousness. So, gratuitousness is really about unconditional gestures, like what mothers do for their children. Without gratuitousness, the third sector risks to get homologated and turn into something else, to lose itself. It is a challenge. Even more so, we need to collaborate. This is also subsidiarity. But again, we need to protect and defend gratuitousness as a key element. And then creative minority, this is also another key word. And I think that these examples we heard were like living exhibitions. So it is incredible to see such examples. And then the living bricks. Well, they talked about things that may seem ordinary, but actually they are extraordinary. Certainly they are mostly needed things. Protecting the weakest, protecting the victims. Nothing is lost. Everything can be repaired, can be healed. It's not easy, but it's possible. Many responsibilities and maybe not enough support. Well, in the past, we would have said that people try to make miracles with nothing. But actually, I think that you are so good at doing wonderful stuff with very few means and resources. But if at one point you need really to struggle and try to somehow find difficult solutions because you fear that maybe the following year you won't have enough resources or funding, well, then everything is then put at stake again. Then, when it comes to institutions, there should be some shared accountability because some realities really need to get guarantees of stability in order to make sure that they can carry on with their activities. So this is very important also to provide security to professional people that really work in this field. For instance, there are diseases that are almost invisible. Sometimes you need long-term planning, or you need professionals that need to be acknowledged. If this not happen, that can be a problem in the long run. And so that can generate further difficulties. And then, well, creativity can become really precious and strategic. Well, certainly, people think that when you are in need, you always come up with creative solutions. And maybe, as it is written also in a psalm, it is true that when we are in desperate need of something, we come up with incredibly creative solutions. But, well, this is also a cry for help that needs to find answers. And then the kindness to oneself. This is something else that struck me a lot, being kind to oneself. And those who arrive keeping their eyes low. And those who keep their eyes like that, well, do so. They look down because they feel maybe shy, or so keeping eyes down, looking down is something that always is a sign of being humble. And so let's try to remember the importance of subsidiarity in the light of this all. Thank you. So I would really like to thank our guests and His Eminence, Cardinal Zuppi, so Don Matteo. And I would like to end on the last remark coming from a singer that I love, Iannacci. And he usually talked about the origin of gratuitousness. And he talked about the fact that everybody counts, even a homeless. And in a song he says that homeless person had very good eyes, because people looking down often have good eyes, but eyes are good only if you're able to look at them. And this can also become a political project. Thank you.
Questo è un luogo che genera dialogo,
Qualcuno che si impegna, che si batte.
che approfondisce la conoscenza e sostiene la fiducia. È un crocevia dove si incontra chi desidera il vero, il bello, il giusto e il bene. È una testimonianza di speranza nel cuore ferito del presente. E tutto questo
Proporre con la propria vita.
esiste anche grazie a te.
È bello avere quello che ti serve quando ti serve. Con Easy Bank, la banca digitale di Intesa San Paolo. Easy Bank, semplicemente banca.
Vi prego, vi imploro, con umiltà e con fiducia, permettete a Cristo di parlare all'uomo.
Don Gius aveva capito il problema che avevo. Se la tua vocazione è vero, il tuo lavoro verrà fuori anche dai sassi.
Di comunicare la fede agli altri, ma veramente insieme a loro riscoprire che cos'è la fede, che cos'è la fede per me. Portare Cristo agli altri, comunicarlo agli altri è l'unico modo che abbiamo per conoscerlo veramente.
L'iter comunionis aiuta a comunicare all'esterno la ricchezza di vita, di giudizi, di tentativi, di opere che nascono dalle persone e dalle comunità. L'iter comunionis è proprio la vita del movimento. Scrivete all'iter comunionis le vostre esperienze, ci fate bene.
È bello avere quello che ti serve quando ti serve. Con Easy Bank, la banca digitale di Intesa San Paolo. Easy Bank, semplicemente banca.
vi imploro con umiltà e con fiducia, permettete a Cristo di parlare all'uomo.
Don Gius aveva capito il problema che avevo. Se la tua vocazione è vero, il tuo lavoro verrà fuori anche dai sassi.
Di comunicare la fede agli altri, ma veramente insieme a loro riscoprire che cos'è la fede, che cos'è la fede per me. Portare Cristo agli altri, comunicarlo agli altri è l'unico modo che abbiamo per conoscerlo veramente.
L'Iter Communionis aiuta a comunicare all'esterno la ricchezza di vita, di giudizi, di tentativi, di opere che nascono dalle persone e dalle comunità. L'Iter Communionis è proprio la vita del movimento. Scrivete all'Iter Communionis le vostre esperienze, ci fate bene,